folks know, it kind of preaching to the choir, that this would help our local restaurants, retail businesses. The increase in sales for restaurants and business means an increase in sales tax revenue for the city. An increase in hotel visitors means an increase in hotel occupancy tax revenue for the city. And this will bring a few employment opportunities to Floresville citizens. Oftentimes, these don't bring a lot of high-paying jobs or anything like that, but many times there's high school kids get hired, dragging the fields, meaning, on a riding lawnmower, riding around the infield, and after every game, watering it, depending on if we have a system that's going to do that, and they just drag the field. There's different ways of working that. Concession, we already have, I guess we're going to do a lot of negotiating with y'all on that. We have a couple of different alternatives that I think you guys would be interested in. The popularity of the town as a family-friendly town will really increase. The Miracle League, the Floresville, that would have just a really positive effect on how Floresville is perceived throughout the state. And then, of course, the Peanut Festival alone will see hundreds more visitors to the town. This goes back just to show a little bit about the Miracle League on page 9 on this, where their motto, every child deserves the chance to play baseball. I would say really take time to look that up online. And this would just give people another reason to visit Floresville. Together, the city of Floresville and Floresville baseball country will be a winning team. If we work together, I know we can make it happen. And we really appreciate the time y'all have been patient with us the last time and this time. And we really feel like this is a winning proposal. Of course, we're open for any questions.
I have a couple. What effect is this going to have on our existing local program?
That's probably the number one best question that you could ask. I went to the Little League last month and asked if I could speak to them about this, because I'm familiar with the Little League in years past and recently, as far as when I talked to them the other day and asked them about how things are going, or to tell them what our plans are. If I'm explaining this to anyone who is unfamiliar at all with baseball, the first thing they say to us when we talk about baseball, they say is, well, we have a Little League. This has nothing to do with the Little League, but it can. And that's what I went to the Little League to tell them. I said, the select ball, and they do know about select ball. I said, this select ball can benefit your Little League immensely. I've seen it happen. It's happened at McAllister Park. It's happened at a lot of places. Now, some people, it depends on the people that are involved. Some people will not get along with anybody. It doesn't matter how good it is. Smart people that realize that they want to help their particular league, and I've seen this happen, will say, we're going to get a part of this select baseball tournament action. Why? Because then we can negotiate and make some money from the concession, and we can help our Little League. And we can build our fields better, or whatever we need better, by having made our money off of this select stuff these people want to bring to our fields anyway. So it becomes a win-win, because the select, to answer your question more specifically, select baseball in Floresville can only really enhance this by making their fields nicer. If I'm going to have select tournaments, I know my fields have to be nice. I know I have to have irrigation on them, for example. There's no irrigation on the Little League fields or the city fields at River Park. So if I'm going to use those fields, if I want teams to keep coming back, then I need those fields to be nice. So I would have to invest money, and we're willing to do that, of course. Invest money and put irrigation systems in there, of course, so the fields can look good. Help maintain those. So we want the Little League to be strong. We even gave them ideas. I gave them ideas of how they can up their numbers and with the younger ones. For a couple of reasons, I think they weren't interested in that, but that's because partially it looks like there's not a lot of space. I mean, we've all seen there's soccer, there's football, and my kids have played football out there. They don't have the space. We realize that. But this venture is about us making money and the city getting revenue from all the visiting and whatever other negotiation that we did. It's not about having to sustain the Little League, but I went there willingly, I'll always be a supporter of the Little League. That it goes both ways. They don't use those ball fields on weekends. We'd love to use those ball fields on weekends, because then we have bigger tournaments. And then more people come, more teams come, more people stay, more people spend their money in Floresville. It's a win for everyone. And so that's how it's supposed to work. And lastly, if you want to get to specifics, if that Little League is big, then the select coaches, and we're not talking about some group from some other place. These would be Floresville guys are going to coach from here. They're going to say, I want to coach select. There's several of them already. They got to travel all the time. They can't use the fields there, Well, they probably could, but they get run off. So they say, get these fields and we'll use those fields. And I'm saying, hey, you can play tournaments with us. And I tell the Little League, you can play Little League. You can play Little League ball. It won't affect it. Finish your league season, and then to be specific about competition, as soon as the season's over, let them play select tournaments on any of these Floresville teams that are gonna be playing there. They're already playing, like I said, they're just playing elsewhere. And then they're gonna get really good skill-wise. And some of the responses that I got was, well, if they're gonna get good, they're not gonna wanna come back to the Little League. It's not the case. There's a lot of select players there now playing there because they don't want to have to drive everywhere to do that. I can name a whole bunch of them. But the fact is, at least several that I know, they went back to the Little League because it's close, it's there, and they're just dying to have the select ball there.
The Little League kids from McAllister Park, they're all select players.
Yeah, as far as
select soccer in San Antonio for a number of years. I team boys. And I understand what you're saying about the leagues. I ended up picking my kids up from high schools all over San Antonio, Churchill, Jay, Marshall. And all of those kids had started in the younger years and had finally gotten up to their high school teams and gotten on select teams and moved forward and we did an awful lot of traveling. The other thing, security. I know sometimes, at least in soccer, and I've seen little league baseball, we've had a few instances where we've had some overzealous parents and all of a sudden you've got a mess going on. I can remember 2 or 3 of them. But would you have provisions for security and stuff like that?
That's a good question, and I can't say I have all the answers, but that's a good question. I think I would ask that question. Of all the traveling we've done and all the baseball we played with both age groups, I've never seen security, like a security officer roaming around. I've never seen that other than one place in Houston. We go to Houston a lot for these tournaments. There's an officer on horseback. If there were any problems whatsoever, then obviously I would definitely do that. Being a police officer, I don't think I could stand for like a crime spree that happened or people. We're a non-alcoholic. There would be no alcohol sold for sure, and I know that always seems to help. But I do have a friend who's a pretty good friend, and he has a security company. He's in law enforcement in Floresville, in Wilson County. And he'd probably be my first go-to guy where I have to hire some security from him. But,
well, I was a police officer in Houston. I am aware of those things back in the day. Maybe?
See, I have anything. So you're gonna have you're asking for a 5-year lease?
10 years.
10-year on the baseball field area. The concessions, 5, negotiable, of course.
So then you guys would be responsible for the upkeep and maintenance and
Yes,
things
ma'am.
like that?
Yes, any maintenance, the fields, of course, we're maintaining. The grounds, being that this is gonna be, I'm invested in this whole thing. My job is to come back, of course we clean up, but my job is Monday through Thursday, the guys that usually are the owners or whatever, it's cleanup, making it presentable, making it nice. By the time Friday evening or Saturday morning comes around, it's about getting, the umpires show up and all that is ready to go, but it's gotta be a beautiful looking place. So any maintenance is on us. The only exception to that would be, of course, I don't know how it works with leases on a standard, like, a pipe breaks in the kitchen or something like that, those kind of things.
Yeah. One thing, you're talking about pipe breaking, have you checked to see if we have the water, the ability to furnish water for irrigation?
Yeah, I've called the guy who did our well, and looking at that well over there, the project manager looked at it, said that well is a good well, but he doesn't know where it pumps yet. And we kind of, until we have an agreement, we definitely want to use the well back there, and I'm kind of unfamiliar in how the process is going to work, if we negotiate, at what point do we negotiate the ins and outs of that, but
So you want to use the well?
we want to use the well for irrigation of the fields, not for any potable water. If we build the bathrooms, of course, we want, that's not going to be off the well. As this thing grows and we build concessions out there on the property, of course, we're not going to use well water, we want to use potable water. So all that, I think.
Would you have separate electrical lines and separate water bills and?
Well, at that back rodeo arena, there's a meter back there, and I assumed that we would be using that meter so that we pay the electric bill.
That would be, these are things that we would have to
Right, I don't
come
know.
up in a workshop and
Sure.
figure out.
I'm not through with my question. And then at the end of 10 years, people say, well, you've done your time and you're through with that. Then what happens to that when the lease is up? Who takes that over?
Hopefully my kids. No, what I'd really like to do is be there forever, more than 10 years. But I say 10 years, we use 10 years because looking at the numbers, we know that we'll make our money back and then some, and we'll be able to make it a beautiful park. By the end of 10 years, it'll be like a fully done.
And what kind of entity would come in to take that lease over?
Well, any city or anybody with
So you wanna hit
ball
back in the
fields like
city?
that, well, anything be negotiable. But like I said in here, we want the right of first refusal. We don't want, for sure, and that's something we'll talk to our lawyer about, we don't want a situation where this is going great and 10 years are up and it went by like that and everybody's happy, and then all of a sudden we're booted out. We look at it like, we're gonna be here. It hasn't occurred to me that we would wanna do something else. But after 10 years, if you have a beautiful baseball complex, it's gonna,
But it's still the maintenance and
Sure.
the cost and
right.
the Orbeez.
Right, well, exactly. It's like having, I guess, a great, functioning place that if it wasn't there, ball fields are pretty easy. If you look at it, people have said, oh, why are you looking at this property when I was looking before? Guys that do these, floodplain, it's no big deal. Let it get flooded. What happens 2 weeks later in Texas? Playing ball on it. Playing ball in Houston, it rains all the time. You're playing 4 hours later. So here, if the city decided that we were going after 10 years and said, wow, we don't want this anymore, we're gonna build a parking lot or something, it's not too hard to take out, fences for a ball field. It's dirt and grass. It's a lot nicer than the dirt and grass that's out there now. So I would say that it's an easy, transition, I think.
Well, I'll tell you what, my suggestion would be that we need to consider this as a full board. And I think we need to put it on an agenda item as a possible action. And then go from there. And we've got some questions we need to ask the city also. thank you very much, and you've given us something to think about.
I sure appreciate the time.
And we're gonna have to, there's a lot involved in this. It's not a decision we can take lightly or make a snap decision, because then we're locked in. And we've had things, people talk to us about convention facilities, hotel facilities. We've had a lot of different things offered to us, and we're gonna have to eventually sort all that stuff out and come up with what we would want to do with this.
Sure. It's a great
It's gonna
facility.
take a lot of community input too.
Sure.
So, thank you very much.
Okay.
I appreciate it. And we will, when we can get this as an agenda item, and have some, add some other information to it, then we'll certainly call you. And can I get a number for
Sure,
you?
210-215-2731. Would it be helpful if I brought, if we do this next meeting, if I brought the plans of what we're looking at, and give you more visual?
I'll be glad for you to do that.
Sure. Okay, good.
We want to make an informed decision, we want to make a fair decision, and we need as many facts as we can possibly come up with. I think we're open to looking.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to move back to new business number 6. Consideration possible action related to the event center, event rental fees and concession fees.
Sure.
The council is wanting to meet with us on Thursday. I will not be available on Thursday. Would anybody, would you hear anything?
What time?
I think there, I haven't seen their agenda. I think it starts at 7.
We're on the agenda?
They're wanting to put us on the agenda.
Well, if we're not on there by now, then we're not gonna be there. Because it had to be
They wanted,
posted.
well, they've got it posted for their annual update, or their update. So I just will not be able to be there Thursday.
Yeah, I can go.
And they may not ask us about this yet, but they're going to want to know where we're,
We just did, we did that like last month.
yeah.
So we have to do it every month now, or I thought it
Yeah,
was
they
every
want us-
quarter?
No, they wanted us to do it every, at least Andy told me to be prepared for this kind of meeting. Every Thursday. So, and I told him I was not there.
Yeah, I'll get with him and see what we need to put together.
Okay. I think we put some changes forth on
And I don't have those changes. Paige would have had those. You weren't here at the last meeting either? Okay.
Yeah, Rob was here.
Okay.
There were additional changes to that?
That's what, I missed the meeting also, so he says there were
That was
changes
a work
made.
session, though, right? There wasn't like an official.
Right.
There
They just
was,
make
there
notes.
was just we were just looking at, the notes.
I know you
And I
said,
think
Oh, it's like
you've made those
corrections.
corrections on there.
like, we did the $50 per hour, say like on the meeting rooms or whatever, or $300 a day. You know, if you take the $50 and you multiply it by 8 hours, that comes out to $400, which you would get a better rate if you rented it for the entire, and that's what initially I thought we had decided.
Yeah, I think it was just put on there, I think there was just typo error.
Oh, when we did the presentation, there was, but
Mhm.
Mitsuko and I worked on it right
Okay,
after,
all right.
yes, so we're good to go
All right.
on this.
That was the thing that was concerning us. I know Mayor Garza mentioned that, but we couldn't take any action or do anything about it at that meeting because we didn't have a full quorum. So what that's one reason I wanted to come by and say, if this is a document we're going to take to the city, then we need to go ahead and say this is what we're recommending. Now, they may, I've asked them in the last meeting, the last time we took this to them, to make suggestions, suggest possible changes and things like that. I have had no feedback other than what Mayor Garza showed. And I think probably that was fixed by the updates that we didn't have last time. So I guess my recommendation is that we proceed with this schedule of fees.
See right here how we had, it was $30, previous was $30, and then we had $30 per day. So it was, instead of per hour, I believe is where the discrepancy was.
Right.
And that was just a typo on our
Right.
part, or just not catching that.
And that's what we thought.
This here, this one is a corrected,
Okay.
so I believe we're on the right. But I will get with Paige and see
Okay.
if I could see the notes that you took from the workshop and double check before we present this again.
And there again, it keeps coming up, you know, I know we're increasing the fees. But yet, we have a financial responsibility to the city also. That we've got to be, you know, at least competitive in both ways with what the product we're putting out and how it's, and still, I hear Ms. Moon and Ms. Hinkie very clearly, because I've been in that situation where we just couldn't afford the extreme rates that some people are charging. And, but anyway.
So your recommendation?
My recommendation is that we go ahead and take this to the council with 20%, I think we said 20% discount for nonprofit.
Which we're lowering that, it does say it. We're giving them 30% now, so you're making the recommendation that it remains at the 20% that we proposed originally.
That's correct.
The problem is that we're being asked to do a job and then they keep hollering.
Well,
And we're limited on our.
welcome to city life. That's a part of working with any city government. They're going to ask you to do something and say, but really don't do that.
Yeah. And we're gonna give you no power.
Right. But I think our obligation is to come up with something that will enable our center to stay viable and healthy financially and still service the community on a fair and reasonable basis. And that's a challenge for anyone. I don't care if you're talking about the AT&T Center in San Antonio or the Alamo Dome or whatever. They're facing the same problem. And it may be that as we get into this, we may say we've got to revise it again.
Bill, can I bring this up about the one you both told, that they zero? Or is that, I need to put that on our agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
And it has been discussed, and that's going to have to be something else, again, that we're going to have to get a little bit of guidance from council as to what they want to do. We have obligations to the Boys and Girls Club, we have obligations to the senior citizens. We have obligations to a total community, and that's what we have, in my view, we have to protect. We have to make sure that our center is inclusive to people who have a right, you know, to be there.
And I do believe we, on the bottom of our proposed fee schedule, we state that local governmental agencies may request use of the event center free of charge for nonprofit events. If you're here not making money, then they can bring it to the board and it's something we can look at.
Yeah. And that's our out on that type of thing, is that they can bring things to board. However, what I don't want to occur is that every time we have a meeting, we have 15 people lined up at the door wanting to come in and talk about this. We'll be here till 3 o'clock in the morning and still not be finished with our agenda.
I think the huge word is nonprofit.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not making,
Well, they tell me, they told me that it was a branch of a nonprofit. That's how they stand.
And that's something we're going to have to address, is what do we consider a nonprofit in our fee structure? If we're making money for a nonprofit organization, is that qualified, we're saying they're nonprofit, well, they are making a profit, but they're making it for the use of a nonprofit, like, do you understand where I'm going with that?
But then we would never be able to charge because, the fire department makes a profit to buy equipment and, so I mean, we would be back to
Yeah,
never being
and see,
able to charge them.
that's where we get into I guess, what you call sticky wicket.
Yeah. And just to add, if you don't mind, I know at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, they structured their, I don't know if they have a fee schedule, the current leases that they have, they specify with their fees that that's only for internal. So if they're giving discounts to nonprofits or whatever, it's only internal. In other words, Phase One country, when they were talking about having events for nonprofits and stuff, I don't know if you want that language because it's for the event center to extend out to the exterior of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to include more specific language on that particular one. It's up to you guys, but I mean,
I think we probably should note.
because the event center could include the grounds around it. Of course, on your fee schedule, you specify the rooms, so it's
Right.
obvious. But when you have language that deals with nonprofit events, it doesn't specify if it's just for inside or if it's the
Or
whole
if it
grounds.
includes the whole
Right.
thing. And see, he was going on about the city park, but we don't have any control really over the city park. And he would have to go back to the Park and Recreation Board about that. And I'm wondering if maybe we don't need to talk to Park and Recreation about maybe he needs to make this program.
I think we need a group workshop together with him, with the council, with the parks, and with us, because
This-
that's gonna entail a lot. And Rob and I don't know if you passed out this before the last meeting, it's just, these are the factors that we had kind of used this discussion points for the last meeting. Then we added this on today, just something for you guys to consider as you're, or look at as you're considering the baseball. It's just providing guidance, Rob wanted to provide guidance on the steps you want to take, you don't want to put the cart before the horse. So, on there it states, the first thing you should consider is,
Yeah.
whether you want this, that kind of thing. And then, so, I
And,
don't know if that's helpful.
like I told him, there are many people who are interested in the use of this thing. We've
Sure.
had people talk about, we had one guy came and talked to us about putting on a hotel back there.
See, that's my thing, is this gonna limit us in the future when we
That's-
are where we want to be able to produce something that's gonna be revenue for?
Well, suppose someone comes in here, let's say we get 3 years in the lease, and all of a sudden, here comes, Holiday Resorts of America, just whatever. And they say, well, you've got an event center, we would like to put a hotel and sports bar and this type of thing in there. And, this is really gonna complement, that might be something we wanna do. But if we're locked into a 10-year lease with his, then,
Or a water park or a golf, something.
Yeah, there's a lot of-
We've looked at so many things, so.
there's a lot of things that come into this. And our fee structure, as far as the building, I can see where we're gonna have to maybe adjust this a little bit back and forth. We'll have to we'll present this, and then when the time comes, we find out, well, we're not able to rent these rooms because people don't want to pay that kind of money for them. Then we may have to come back and say, council, we need to adjust this.
What I understand, and going in my head, that any money, like when we pay these fees, it wouldn't go to the city, it would go into the 4A of the bond.
Right. Well, it goes into the 4A theoretically, I think that what would happen, remember, you got two funds.
Yeah.
You've got the the bond fund,
Yes.
which is your sales tax.
Yes.
And then you've got the maintenance and operation fund.
Second part of the city.
And that's gonna be, well, when we take over, it's gonna come out of us.
These funds that we wanna raise right now, do those funds go to the 4A in the bond?
Eventually, yes, not
Or
the
does it
bond,
go to the
it will
city?
go to the maintenance and operation, which we said in 2015.
It will be our responsibility.
It's gonna be our responsibility. Initially, it's probably gonna go.
I really don't even see a question of why it would get turned down.
Well, I don't think it will, but I think that we have to be prepared for adjustments to be made in the future.
You might want to increase them.
We
because
may
in a
want,
year,
you
but
know,
it's
we
like,
might
oh,
find
I'm
out,
sorry, I don't know if that
we
was-
may find out
Who
that,
knows?
you know, we're below still everyone else. I think that, and the problem with that is that some people, for instance, when you rent the center, you get tables and chairs and all that stuff like we do. Other places, you get the center for a lower fee, but then you pay for every table, you pay for every chair, you pay for tablecloths, you pay for, I guess to stretch the restroom. You know, you pay for each individual item separately. And it's kind of hard to decide where you are in that fee structure. And I think that's why we need to be sure of our homework here. But there again, and I know that when Ms. Hankey called me the other day, she was very concerned, and she has a right to be. They've got a really nice program out there, and we don't want to be the end of it. But,
Well,
yeah,
we also have to keep in mind that our facility is, just like he said, you know, you don't find a
No,
facility
you
like
don't.
that anywhere.
I was out there Friday night for the boxing match. That place was packed. I mean, packed. And people, vast numbers of people told me what a wonderful facility this is. And right next door, at the same time, we had volleyball going on. And it was packed.
Perfect. What?
You know, and I think that was a great thing. We need to have that every night of the week, if we can do it. And at a fee structure that we can make our building as profitable as possible. And that's not gonna be gouging anybody, it's gonna be doing what we can do for a fair market
Well,
value.
also, we don't necessarily wanna make money, we just wanna not.
We wanna mitigate the losses. For right now. Hopefully, yeah,
Well, it seems like a
hopefully if we can make money, I would like to, but certainly we need to mitigate the losses that the city is incurring.
Right, it needs to run, it's on its own, it needs to run by
It
itself
needs to run by itself,
without.
and that's why the city, I think, is asking us to take over. Because I'm not sure that they, have figured out how to quite do that yet, and I don't know how we're supposed to, but I think we're gonna try, we're gonna give it the best shot possible. But I say we run this by the council, see what they say. Again, if they have any questions or changes, then we can come back after the council meeting and address those. Anybody have any further comments, questions?
So on Thursday, you want this passed back out to the council, or only if they ask for it?
I would pass it back out and say this is the fee structure that we've given you and point out the changes that we've made. And then, they've already got their packets. I see they were picking those up this afternoon. So it's too late to give them the packet, but, tell them this is the fee structure that we are recommending. And let them know that we may come back and ask for changes at a later date. I think that's fair.
And what else do you want to add to that we're working on? I mean, this has basically been our,
This is the first thing, this is the first step we're trying to make. And if they ask, you know, I would say, suggest that our fee, that, you know, this would apply to new bookings.
Well, it will,
Yeah.
it won't take
It's
effect
not gonna
until,
take effect.
we're booked this
And
year
we're-
and 3/4 of
we're
next
three-
year.
Yeah, we're already booked, this
So
is not gonna
2000
happen.
Yes,
Yeah.
2014.
We've got
we're-
30-some odd bookings already in 2014.
So these are, you know, it's just gonna be for new, so we're looking still a ways away to even collect anything
Yeah,
that we raise.
this is a long-term proposal here.
The center, you know, the center sells itself, it books, we don't have to go out and hunt. It's.
I would never have thought that we would have success booking that thing as we do. When I talked to New Braunfels, they said, well, you know, their struggle is just trying to get a couple events during the week. And a couple of events, we got stuff all week long out there sometimes. Now, sometimes we have a dry spell where we don't have that many, but we've had real good success doing that. And I felt a lot of companies have helped us out a lot with that, having their training sessions and things like
I
that.
don't think that, you know, these fees are gonna phase the people who are
No.
renting.
Those rules.
So you guys are booked up until when again?
We're into 2014.
This
So-
year is
On
almost
weekends.
completely booked.
Yeah.
There may be 1 or 2 Saturdays available, completely booked, and then the 2014 is already started booking.
So if all of a sudden your bookings drop dramatically and you have to go through a couple months where no one's booking, and you might have an idea of how this, you know, you still have time to change that
Right.
one before.
And it's not going to be a thing that's, we've got a buffer zone.
Right.
But if you take a look at the research that we did the other places, what we're going to, the prices are not off.
They're about the same.
Yes, they are,
And
yes.
like Bill said, it's all inclusive, you don't have to pay for
Yeah.
every
And,
activity.
you know, we put the tables up and the chairs, and you
That's a
don't
big deal.
have to pay for every chair and every table or this and that. You know, we do rent the linens and that kind of a thing, but,
Nickel and dime to do that.
yes.
And the projectors and stuff like that, we charge for those, but we also have to replace them if they go bad.
Sure.
And one bulb in those projectors,
They're like $100-something, right?
try 250.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh.
And, you know, those things are expensive items to replace.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be, plus, you know, the wear and tear on the building. When our building was brand new, we didn't have a lot of maintenance fees. I mean, we didn't have everything work, and now every once in a while, air conditioner breaks down, or we have a water leak, or, you know, light bulbs have to be replaced. And believe me, replacing a light bulb in that thing is not the easiest thing in the world. So, those are things that are gonna take more time. Eventually, we're going to have to hire more people, and this is going to have to cover that eventuality.
And as it gets busier, even now, Rob wanted me to remind you that, even if you're allowing an entity to use it for free or discount, whatever, that it's really important to have them sign something before they use the premises to release liability that you guys would have, or the community center would have in case there's an accident or something
Sure.
breaks, you know, God forbid. But just to protect yourselves, you know.
That makes sense.
Well, I'm glad we're able to have this open discussion and honest discussion about these things, and I think it's things that we're gonna eventually have to do. We're gonna have to make some tough decisions on some of these items. And it's not gonna make us popular, but we're gonna have to do it the best we can, to be as fair and equitable as we can. As inclusive as we can. You know, I'd love to see baseball. I'd love to see soccer. I'd love to see, you know, a lot of things happen, but we only have 130-some acres. Resources to do it. Anyone have anything else they'd like to bring? That's all that fits in this agenda.
Not on this agenda, but for the next meeting, to put on the agenda, I think we need to look at replacing Mr. Hoffman. I've called him several times. I don't know if you talked to him or not, but be
That's
nice.
being taken care of by a letter, because our bylaws provide for that, so I'm simply going to send a letter asking the council to make a replacement. I discussed that with her, she discussed it. Okay?
Yes, I forgot it.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's bring it up 2 weeks from today.
Oh. Okay, I have a recommendation. Can we have meetings on the same time of the month?
I would like to
Twice as
say,
crazy.
I would like to say that we have meetings in the immediate future, like every 2 weeks. And the reason I say that is because we are encountering more and more things that we don't have to do. And I think.
Can they be on, like, every other Tuesday?
And I think that means,
Something consistent?
I think that every other Monday
Okay.
from here. And the reason I say that is we need to, that's why we need to have a full board, is because there are going to be times when I can't be here, there will be times, but the board is going to have to make decisions about certain items. And the more we take into the management of this, the more we're going to have to make decisions. We don't have an executive director. And that's, decisions have to be made. And sometimes it's gonna be somebody makes it, one of us is gonna have to make a decision and come back to the board and say, I did this because I had to. And I think that's already happened once in January. So I think we need to look at that. And
Can you share this and I'll talk to you?
well, I'll tell you what it was the first year that we were here, and all of a sudden on the 4th of July, our executive director resigned. And right before the 4th of July, I had to have somebody to manage the building that day. So, Alex, and I came to the board and said I did what I had to do when I had to do it. Because it was just like we had to have somebody that day to run the building. And
I'm
he'd
not
been working
impressed
with
at
me.
all with executive director.
Well, but somebody has to make decisions sometimes. In your business, there are some times when you have to say, we gotta do this, we got a pipe leak, we gotta fix it, we gotta do it now, we can't wait till the board meets to approve you see what I'm saying?
So the next meeting, we're gonna set for June the 3rd,
Okay,
because today's the 20th, that would be June 3rd, 6:30.
right. And if there's no further business, I'm going to ask for someone to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Popham, seconded by Conley, that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Third, right?
June 3rd.
And that's a Monday.
That's a Monday.
Just skipping everywhere and back and forth is just throwing me.
I understand.
It just,
I understand.
I'm not forcing anything. It's a rhythm.